Uh-oh. There's no Jamar.
Okay, we're by.
I'm sorry.
What is happening?
You were like swaying to the music.
Look at that, Mike. Tell everybody out in viewer land about your doll.
Not a doll. It's my friend.
he's not a doll. He's an action figure.
This is a Bison. And I don't know what that means in Japanese or whatever, but it's basically a nice posable doll. I have a couple of them. I have 2 men and 1 female. They're great for posing.
Do we have to put a modesty bar over him?
No, because I don't have his
junk.
And they actually do come with
junk sold separately.
Yes, the junk. Well, junk is in a separate package.
That's a double entendre.
That's right. Package is in a separate package.
His junk is in a separate package.
But these are great, and you can actually. These were 1/6 scale, and there's all kinds of celebrity heads that you can get.
Really?
And so, yeah, there's like 3. There's 3 male figures. One like built like Arnold, one like a kickboxer, and then this guy. And then there's like I think 3 or 4 female. They have like the big bazooms or normal.
Are those sold separately too?
They are sold separately, although the genitalia is right on the model.
Oh, okay, right on the money.
Right on the money. Yeah,
that's interesting. That's interesting, and maybe we could touch on that pause real quick. Thinking, I didn't do that on purpose. Thinking about kind of like I was pittering around on Amazon, and they had not the what they call Friesens. Is that what they're called?
Bison.
Friesens.
P-H.
Oh, there's a
I-C-E-N. I think Bison.
Bison. Okay, I saw something like that, and that's if you've ever seen if you ever go to IKEA or someplace, and there's like an artist set up, or there's like a drafting table. There's always a little wooden mannequin.
Yeah, well, this is like way better than a wooden mannequin because it actually has, fairly accurate muscles. Yeah,
right, and that's probably something I wanted to talk about quickly, and then we'll do the intros because I know everybody's excited to do the intros. It's just how often artists use like models like that, like having like a little dude on your table or something like that, or head sculpts or something like that.
I never used the regular wooden guy thing. It just like that. But this I use all the time because one of the great things about it is you can see is like there's a really great head, so you can like light that and get really good.
Bradley Cooper, is that you?
So you probably can get a Bradley Cooper head.
That's fantastic.
You can get the Arnold Schwarzenegger body and get the Bradley Cooper head. So
all your dreams come true, Steve.
Yeah. But yeah, I use it all the time. Well, like for tricky angles.
That's interesting. All right, well, we'll talk a little bit more about that because we have a whole hour and change to talk our ears off. And you know what? I'm ready. You're ready. Let's do it. Well, hello. Well, hello. Yeah, and welcome back to Pencil to Pencil, your favorite pandemic podcast, brought to you every Wednesday at 8 p.m. by your expert cartoonists and co-hosts. Hello, everybody. My name is Jamar Nicholas, Philadelphia's favorite son, and Jean-Luc Picard, the captain of the starship J&N. Engage. Make it so. I would be remiss, you guys, if I did not introduce my co-host. You know him as the world heavyweight champion of webcomics. He defended his title in Japan over the break. Stone Cold! Stone Cold! Steve Conley. What's up, Steve Conley?
Gentlemen, I have missed you.
Finally, we have returned. And also, the Grand Marshal, the El Generalissimo of comic book illustration, the full bird colonel of comics, Mike Manley. What's up, Mike Manley?
Hey, everyone.
I don't know how
I'm
I
up.
do that.
I'm vertical.
All right, good. It's better than being horizontal. Welcome, guys. Welcome back to Pencil to Pencil. This is a live stream podcast, live John, whatever you want to call it, where us. Oh, what did you say?
John cast.
A John cast. I like it. We need to trademark that. Where we come to you every week when we are actually here, and we talk about what's going on in the minds, lives, and hearts of professional comic book artists. And from time to time, we have guests as well. But tonight we're going.
Hearts.
Oh. What up, Bill? Bill says, "Full bird, not light kernel." Mike Manley.
Yeah. 7 herbs and spices right here.
That's right. Did you? I heard this, and this is kind of where this is the riffing portion of our show. I heard somewhere that, and I could be wrong, but there is in Japan. There's like a tradition to eat fried chicken at the holidays, specifically Kentucky Fried Chicken.
I know that they have a lot more. They're more mascot oriented as a society.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a lot of mascots for everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like Hello Kitty, she's kind of like a mascot, right?
Sure.
And they have like a big like Colonel Sanders fetish in Japan.
Well, KFC is hot in Japan.
Yeah.
Not, I don't know how hot it is here, but I think we have more choices. But KFC is a thing. That's a
I remember when I went to China.
Mm-hmm.
It was 2008, right before the Olympics, and they had opened up some KFCs there, and I think in Vietnam, and people were standing in line like 8 hours to get a bucket.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of when Krispy Kreme came back to the East Coast. Now there was a point where Krispy Kreme invaded I don't know what happens in other parts of the world, but Krispy Kreme was kind of new for a minute, and they opened up way too many franchises, and it kind of just like collapsed on itself. Then they came back like 5 years later, and that died too. But the only place I know to get a Krispy Kreme is in Penn Station in New York these days.
Yeah, I don't think there was a Krispy Kreme near me. I don't remember if it's still there. I think Dunkin' Donuts clocked them. I think they just couldn't penetrate the Dunkin' Donuts domination.
Yeah, it's interesting. And if you've also noticed, so talking about the new year, that Dunkin' Donuts is really quietly changing their branding. It's just Dunkin'.
Yeah,
right now.
Just like KFC, they got rid of the fried chicken part because it's like, oh, donuts are not cool. But then you have here in Philly, we have Federal Donuts. And they're all the donuts.
Oh yeah, Fed Donuts. It's a kind of boutique donut spot that's really popular.
You charge $9 for the donut. You say donut. You claim it.
That's right. Claim that. And what we're going to do, dear viewers, tonight is we're going to claim 2023. I have an old standing rule that I never claim a year. It's bad luck when you say this is the summer of George or something like that. It never goes your way. Right? Or like, oh, this is going to be my summer. This is not your summer. You want to break it arm. But, from how we ended 2022, where we had a really fantastic episode where we kind of did a wrap up of how our year went. The bullet point for this episode is 2023, the year ahead. So the guys and I have all got together and we kind of threw the ball around about what we could talk about. And hopefully all of our viewers who are watching this live can add to the conversation. Possibly some things that you're looking forward to in your own personal lives or maybe your professional lives. Some things that are on the horizon, maybe entertainment-wise. Perhaps something in the entertainment sphere that you're really looking forward to. And then also I thought that we could talk a little bit about the calendar as a whole. The beginning of the year seems like a reset button for a lot of people's lives. Like, oh man, I really let myself go in October, November, December. You've been eating bad for 3 months. Halloween,
candy corn. I had all the candy corn from October. Still eating it.
Candy corn Christmas. right? And then like by the time you get to December, you're a hot mess, right? So you're like, all right, you know what? January, I'm gonna hit the gym hardcore. But we're talking, and Mike said that you've seen a lot of people say a lot of things that they don't happen, right? So maybe how does that work out in your head? If you know you're going to put it down by February, do you even make a resolution? Mike Manley, I don't think you believe in resolutions, do you?
No, no, I don't. I think that you just sort of set yourself up for failure. I think you just make it. You make a change, and those changes you make one day at a time. If you say like, I'm going to make this big, broad, you just sort of set yourself up to fail. I think. Well, that's why most people, what do? They go out this time of year, they buy gym membership because they're going to be kank by the time it's beach time. And what happens? They go the first January,
March,
right, and then they're still like billing you $29.95 a month for the next 20 years.
Mm-hmm. So is a better move, Mike, to not do what was it? War games. The best way to win is not to play at all.
Right?
Is that how this works?
No, I think you have to have your strategy or whatever, but I think you really just have to concentrate on making those changes on a daily basis because you can handle that. You can say today I'm going to do this, and tomorrow I'm going to do that. But I think when you make it this big, broad thing, it's sort of unwieldy and it sets most people up to fail. I think I was reading an article about that recently. That's why so many people end up, they make this big New Year's resolution. I'm gonna lose weight. But then the reality of doing that every day wasn't really planned for. You know what I mean? It's just like I'm going to storm Normandy.
I'm going to be the king of Monaco.
Right, but there's very concrete steps, and usually
I'm going to go to the gym every day in the coldest snow-covered month of the year.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't even want to get out of the house.
Yeah, and I think most programs, like AA or whatever, it's like every day. It's not like, oh, this year I'm going to quit drinking. It's like, I'm not going to drink today. I'm not going to do this today. I'm going to do this thing today, right? And you string a bunch of todays together, then you have a month of todays.
So maybe that's a good place to start with some of our conversations. So kind of to that point, maybe if anybody in the chat is watching live would like to share something that they were planning on doing, and maybe you're a little hesitant to even say it. I know that we've talked a lot, and kind of the world talks a lot these days about self-care. I was going back through some old videos that I was talking about hashtag self-care in 2018. That was like the beginning of self-care with the hashtag. I'm going to carve out some time for myself. I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm going to be kind to myself, all those kind of things. And I think this kind of like weaves its way into kind of the beginning of the year. I did this. Now I'm going to try to do that. Right. So maybe I'll ask Steve to start off. Steve, was there anything that you did last year? Oh, I already know one. You taught yourself how to 3D sculpt.
Yeah, that was huge. It was huge. I taught myself how to, paint's the wrong word, but to digitally paint, to digitally illustrate. And I love this point that Rob's saying here, that and Tabletop Minions is a channel I just found on YouTube.
I love Tabletop Minions. Shout out to Adam Smasher. Yeah.
The production values are fantastic. What an on-screen presence. But I'm very much in that league. I'd rather have 5 resolutions and not tell anybody. If they can figure it out, that's great. But just have it happen. But I'm also big on setting really simple goals. Really achievable. It's people ask about how do you succeed in webcomics. It's like I say it's like, well, you pick a achievable success. You define it as something that you can do. People say, I want to do this thing, and it's going to be this epic. It's going to be 600 episodes. It's going on forever. It's like, man, how many things are going to sideswipe you?
Yeah.
How many things are going to just jump out of the shadows and get in the way. But if you go, I'm going to create a 10-page story, that's something you can do. And that's, you know, that's and the feeling you get from it succeeding on those little things, and you string those together, as Mike was saying, and you create this amazing thing. But it was to me last year, it was about teaching myself 3D modeling and then digital painting. And that led me into where I am now. And it's 2022 had its share of train wrecks, but all in all, a really good year for me as an artist. You know, maybe the hit by multiple hurricanes, sure, but
and even Steve, with you teaching yourself how to do that, can you maybe talk to our people about any kind of maybe potholes or pitfalls that happened? Like, were there points where you got so frustrated you just wanted to stop? Like, was there what kind of resistance were you kind of coming up against besides hurricanes?
I don't know. There were some technical issues every once in a while. I hit into something, but it was almost, I was doing a lot of this live streaming on Twitch. I have a Twitch channel. I do that, and only like 3 or 4 people might be there, but those 3 or 4 people were kind of like we talked about this. It's mile 17 of the marathon. It's not the finish line. It's not the start of the race. It's the slog in the middle, and your feet hurt. Everything aches, and just a few people just clapping, you know. And that's what it felt like. Where, you know, I just kept going and setting those appointments, saying I'm going to stream on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 4 to 8, and I'm going to do 3D modeling then, and I'm going to mess up a lot, and people watch me mess up a lot, and I come in one day to stream, and the application Nomad Sculpt, which I use, completely changed. Someone went into my office and moved everything, and I'm like, wait, that's new, and that's new, and that's new, but that's
while you were live, you didn't even know, right?
Yeah. I opened up my computer, everything, and the app had updated. So there were challenges, but the audience was lovely.
And that's interesting, Steve, because you basically just identified that your Twitch stream was an accountability partner.
Absolutely. I didn't think of it as such. But it also I was also working on my webcomic, and I was getting to the point of the story where I really couldn't figure it out live on stream. You know, there's a point where the story can go in multiple directions. I talk about, like, anyway, the writing process is not necessarily something that lends itself to streaming. It's because that's not collaborative. Whereas if I'm streaming, if I'm drawing a 3D model and somebody pops into the channel and says, "Is that ear off?" I go, "Yeah, maybe it is." Whereas if I'm writing my story, I can't have other voices in my head.
I've seen some. I was following for a while when I was kind of trying to mentally make this jump into quitting my day job. There's a lady who is on YouTube who's a writer who came from self-publishing, and she even did a vlog of the day she quit her job, and she's sitting in the parking lot in her car crying her eyes out, you know, saying, I this is it. I'm going in and I'm coming out with a box with my plant in it. And just like watching that whole thing happen, it was kind of like a prep for me, and just kind of going, wow, that's wild. But, you know, the idea of having to report to somebody, even if it's the internet, to go, okay, you guys, next week, we're going to do this, and you can help me, or you could do it yourself, and we'll hold each other up. Now, I know some people don't like sharing like that, or feel like it's none of their business, or, you know, what. But I do think having somebody you can kind of report to helps you with those kind of long-term goals. If you're really
and it's absolutely for certain people. I know other people who are like, if the affirmation of the audience is the only thing getting you through it, then it's like, that's, you know, you can feel like you're letting them down. You know what I mean? It starts becoming, there can be a negative pressure to creating where you really want it to be the positive side of things.
I think, I think Gimbals is having a sale right now.
But, you know, you have the idea that you want to make sure the things that motivate. I find that I want the things that motivate me to be positive things, to be like, even just goofing around with a few folks I know on Twitch now, you know, the tiny community that you know, cheers me on.
Yeah, I also think it's whether you're by nature an extrovert or an introvert. I think we're all extroverts, but a lot of people who are introverts would find that kind of a process to be too intrusive, and would sort of short circuit them, you know, like they would want somebody looking over their shoulder while they were trying to learn some technology.
Mhm.
And one of the things about art is that you find that spectrum. You have some artists that are extroverts, and like if you're a teacher, you're an extrovert. You couldn't be an introvert and teach, because it would be sort of like you'd be giving away too much energy, too much of you all
Mhm.
the time. And so I think it really depends, because I know there are some people who are creative, but they have to be private for their creativity. They don't want to share they will share the bread after they've baked it, but
Right.
they don't want you in the kitchen.
I like that.
Well, I think that also is a thing about, I hear comedians talk about this all the time, about like getting on stage and bombing and how good that is for them. I feel like I'm at the point now where if I screw up something completely, this happened yesterday. I was creating this 3D modeling this head. It was terrible. I grabbed the wrong, I moved the tools around. I was grabbing the wrong tools. Next thing you know, the head was all misshapen, and I thought I could salvage it. I had to throw it out. I'm like, no, I'll just throw it out. You have, I think being comfortable screwing up is for me was key. Like I'm at the point now, I don't know if it's just age or what, but if I screw up, I screw up. I just erase it and start over.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an important stage, a vital stage actually, that I actually think it's a line that separates the professional from the amateur, the hobbyist. The hobbyist goes, I spent all week working on this thing, and I don't want to throw it out. I want to keep it, right?
Mhm.
And one of the things, again, going back to teaching, is that some people just get stuck because they're like a dog with a bone. They can't let that thing go, even though it's not working. They're just gonna keep holding on to it. And that is a really important step, when you can go, no matter what it is, this is not working, gone. Start fresh, because you actually learn as much sometimes by failure as you do by success. And if you're tough enough to throw away something that's not working, that's a huge mental step that a lot of people can't ever get over. It is like, they're trying to get in the business. They want, in fact, I just went through this last year actually with a person I was talking to on Facebook. And this guy wanted to get in, draw comics.
Mhm.
But he was convinced that there was a conspiracy at Marvel and DC and all these companies to not hire
To keep him out.
people, to keep these people out. And he was convinced that his work was not where his work was, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And he had a lot of people trying to,
The
say,
gap to the about.
yeah, but he was just, and eventually, you just kind of, you move on, because you realize that person, no matter what, is like anchored. They're holding an anchor, and they're never they just can't mentally let it go. So
Was this a younger creator, Mike?
I think this guy was probably, it appeared to me that he was probably somewhere in his mid-30s,
Mhm. Mhm.
Because I remember when I just got, I think I was 23, 24 when I was doing my first comic, and I was so cocky. I was so full of beans. I was, it was not commensurate with my skill level, but I was so, I can do this. It is so, I hadn't gotten to the point where I could see my own errors and accept them, or just see that I was wall to wall errors. That my portfolio was just one pile of train wrecks. But I don't know. There's something about that kind of cockiness that it does take a certain amount of cockiness, right, to even try.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have to have, I would say,
maybe cockiness is the wrong word.
Confidence.
Confidence, yeah, you have to.
Yeah,
You have to
I guess
have-
'cause if it's confidence, if I talk about confidence in myself, it's got to be, of course, misplaced. But if
Right.
it, maybe confidence is a better word.
yeah. I mean, you do, because you're putting your work out there, and you're gonna get the criticism, and if you can't take it, right, if you're gonna lock onto the thing, you can't take it, then you can't move forward. And in my experience, the older you are, the harder it is to do that. I think that that's a really important step, is to be able to go, I worked on this page all day, and it's a piece of crap. I was drawing all day. I do that. I do that all the time. People think that I don't do it.
I was going to bring that up.
People think that I just like boom magic, and it's no. That's one of the things I tell students all the time. Is like, what you're seeing here is connected to a million hours and a 10 bajillion bad drawings. So you're seeing this, but you're not seeing all that led up
Right.
to that. Right.
That's what I always affectionately talk about, the iceberg, right? And we're all icebergs, where there's so much underneath the surface that you don't see. You just see the top.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that the internet is a great thing for learning. God, I can't imagine having access to all this stuff like when I was 13, 14, 15. But it also presents things in a way that are not real. So you see the speeded up drawings, you see all the stuff. You only see, like you said, the tippity top of the process. You don't see all the other stuff that led up to it.
You know what? Something that's been bugging me lately, you guys, I want to share this, and it looks really cool. In those these new kind of like promos for stop motion, where you kind of see the ghost of the hands moving a character, and it's like, Pinocchio's walking, and Guillermo del Toro is animating it, right? That's what they think those are his hands. That ain't his hands. But it's just like, look, it's the magic of animation, which makes it look easy. It makes it look like, oh, this is just, it's kind of like the idea of, we showed you the magic trick, now you can go do it, with kind of like deleting all of the other parts that make that happen.
Right.
Kind of like the magic trick of, say, Mike drawing the thing right in front of you, and it's just like, wow, I wish I could do that. There's steps missing.
Sit down in a room by yourself for 40 years, you can do all kinds of amazing
Absolutely.
So let's kind of jump ahead a little bit. Now, Mike has a segment that we're going to get to, but before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about like what's kind of popping for 2023. And Steve, you had a couple of bullet points you wanted to maybe talk about.
This is like our entertainment tonight. What's popping for 2023?
Oh, I don't know if they counted as discrete sections. It was more like just looking ahead, and I know for myself that I have a lot on my plate. I think this is going to be a really exciting year. I think I plan to do a lot of crowdfunding. It's not too exciting to say stay the course, but I feel like 2022 set me in a good direction, and I want to kind of keep going in that direction. I want to do more 3D modeling. I want to create more sculptures and more miniatures and things like that.
Put that up to the camera,
goodness.
yo.
I need to. I don't know if it won't be in focus. I don't think I could cheat it to be in focus.
That's so great.
But I've been doing more and more minis, and there'll be more of these and more books. And I started doing these gaming books, and I just got them back over the holidays. But hardcover books for gaming, and I couldn't be happier with how these turned out. These are really the prettiest books I've done so far.
Those are fantastic.
And so I'll be doing more of these, and also there should be a third version of the Middle Age out this year. But I'm trying to hone the Kickstarters. I have ideas on how to make them better. I can share my process throughout the year here on the channel, like how I set these things up. Like I've already set up the one for the next Kickstarter campaign, and so people are already queuing up. So all that stuff I want to be able to share with folks so more people can
Well, you should
do.
put a link to it so people can.
Oh, I'll put the link, but if you go to, I got the URL because of course I did. If you go to deathdealing.com, it's for a rogue subclass.
That's so good.
But if you but I plan to do more Kickstarters. I plan to keep trying to grow my Patreon. I want to keep my webcomic going, and wrap the big arc up for this year. And it's also be the 25th anniversary of Astounding Space Thrills, my first webcomic that came out in 1998.
Yo, I love it.
Are you going to do something special for that?
Yeah, there'll be a Kickstarter for that too. There's going to be, I think, there in 2008. My gosh, many years ago, IDW put together a collection, but that's long out of print. And so now that I have access to wonderful printers, technology, I can do a lot of the stuff myself. There'll be an omnibus for the first time. And so I'm excited. This is gonna be a good year. It's weird to have so much stuff that's diverse, like to do gaming stuff in the Middle Age and Astounding Space Thrills. People will look at me and go, what are you? Which one of those are you? But I like having that material available. I like having the archival. I kind of feel like if I can put that together, that'll be this sort of capstone on that part of my life. It's talking about the new year. I often think of this as kind of like the first page of a blank sketchbook. You know what I mean? It's like, or
you don't turn it into the middle of the book and draw like a little anime head and then close
it. Or leave the first page blank because you don't trust yourself with it.
Right.
There's a question from the chat. Happy New Year, Bill O'Donnell. Our buddy Bill O'Donnell from YouTube land says, Steve, are you thinking about double dipping and doing some stuff on Indiegogo as well? Or are you straight Kickstarter?
I am currently straight Kickstarter just because that's enough of a headache for me to manage. I feel like having that one system that I can check in with and have the app and do all that stuff is enough for me as a solo person. I mean, these books, I'm writing everything, I'm designing them, I'm doing every illustration inside these things. So there's not a lot of people who are doing all of that. You know, when you get a game book, it's usually a team.
Yeah.
I'm doing a soup to nuts. I mean, I'm even mailing these out myself. Every package that goes out is a envelope I sealed. So I feel like having just Kickstarter is plenty for me, And also Kickstarter is really good about reminding my people that, hey, Steve, you backed something from Steve before. Here's a new thing he's doing if you want to get in on it.
Yeah, that's like a built-in mailing list.
And I think that's an important thing that you're saying there is, from experience what your limitation is and how you want to do it and enjoy doing it, because you also enjoy, part of what you enjoy is that whole process. Like some people just want to draw, that's it. I don't want to, it magically goes through the internet, a book comes to me sometime down the right. They don't want to be involved, but you have that entrepreneur, you want to like raise the cow, milk it, make the ice cream, and then take it from the customer, eat it, and tell them how good it was.
One-stop shop.
Now I want to genetically engineer the cow. I'm breeding cows. I'm going all the way back further than that. Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing to know about yourself. Right?
Crazy.
Well, I mean,
control freak. Sure.
Yeah, that you like that because, like, again, there's some people who are not good with that and don't want to do that. They don't want to, nothing about printing. They don't want to talk to a printer. They wouldn't know what to ask.
But to Bill's point, I don't want to put all my eggs in the Kickstarter basket. At the end of a campaign, you can ask survey questions, and one of the questions I ask is, "Do you want to be put on my mailing list?" So if something ever does happen to Kickstarter, I have the contact information for the people who want to hear from me. So I wouldn't say I'm not doing that. I'm hopefully not doing it blindly. I'm doing it with a way so that if something happens to Kickstarter, I can go someplace else.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to monopolize the chat.
No, this was great. And from a lot of people that we've talked to, it seems like the last couple of years and going to the future is all about, this is like the era of Kickstarters, or I guess to be fair, call it crowdfunding.
Yeah.
Let's just call it crowdfunding. And I think just with the successes that people have seen by kind of like going back to that well, which I'm very interested in, like not just I got up the gumption to do one like I did one, now we're doing another one, and now we're doing another one, which I find is like that's really fascinating to me. I wonder about Steve, talking more about Kickstarters. How are you planning out your year? See, we always come back to it. How do you plan? How do you plot out a year to go? Okay, maybe it's not this regimented, but I think with you it is. Okay, every 2 months I'll do a Kickstarter, or we'll see how this one goes, and then we'll do another one in April. Or like, how are you plotting out the year for these
Well,
things?
a lot of times, I often let other things guide or dictate how the schedule is going to go. I know there's certain things that's going to happen. I know there's going to be the Baltimore Comic Con. I know there's going to be Zine Quest. And so I'm doing gaming stuff. That's February and Kickstarter. So the next campaign I have has to run in February. So knowing those fixed points, I build a schedule around them, and then I try to build in room. I want to make sure I don't start another campaign till the last one's delivered. Because if this isn't something where I feel like there's a lot of Kickstarters out there which you seem to be putting, you back somebody and you turn around, they're asking you for another one and asking you for another one, and you want to be generous, you want to help people out. Sometimes it may not be. There are some people whose campaigns I back because I'm excited to see the book, and other campaigns I back because I'm excited to support the creator. But that second category, is a more limited resource. Actually, they both pull from the same pool, but I'd love to be able to support more people, and so I try to spread the love as best I can. So I feel that from the people who support me. I don't want to ask them. I don't want to become a burden, and I don't want. So anyway, I try to tread lightly. And also, I did my last campaign. It was a gaming thing, and the people who read my comics said, "I don't play games." And I'm like, "No, don't apologize. You're very sweet for writing me, but I'll catch me on the next one. You're very sweet." But that's part of me having this weird bifurcated brand of gaming stuff and comic stuff, where
I've always also I don't want to be the host tonight, but I'm just running my mouth. But like also I think there's a thing, and that's interesting because all of us have done different things in our careers. Like, even different subject matter, almost maybe a whole different vibes. Like Mike's a fantastic painter. You know what I mean? That's a whole different Mike Manley to a degree. Do you kind of look at an upcoming year, even to Mike, and thinking about, hey, I've spent a lot of time with these D&D folks. Maybe I need to go and check on, the Astounding Space Thrills people and see if they're still around. Or, you know what I mean? I guess it's kind of like, how do you really measure who's following Steve Conley because they love whatever you do? And I know those people are great, but not all of your fan base is like that. I'm sure you have people who just like kind of show up or say things like, when are you going to do more of X, Y, Z?
Yeah. Well, I feel like, thankfully, my work has got a core quality that links them together. There's a kind of a tone, a kind of silliness, a lightheartedness that links them all together. So even if you're not, but some people are often stuck with genres, they're stuck with styles. If you're working in a style that they don't particularly, if you're visual, and I think we've talked about this before, where the kind of cartooning you do often functions in a way like a genre, where people will see the style of the cartoon and they'll immediately embrace it or reject it.
Yeah,
it's like bluegrass. They're going to either love it or hate it instantly, and they haven't they haven't listened to a note.
It's like swing dancing.
Yeah. Immediately, before you even give it a chance, you've already written it off, or you totally love it. So
sorry, Zoot Suit Riot.
And so a lot of my Astounding Space Trolls people, when I, the readers of that, who, when I was trying to draw like Steve Rude and Russ Manning, when I started drawing in this cartoony style of the Middle Age, they were like, why is his head like that? Why does he only have 4 fingers?
Why is this funny?
Yeah.
So it's weird that I realize stylistically that's a challenge, but there are people who I hope will like the core of it, even if it's, thematically different or not stylistically different. Excuse me. But I don't know how Mike splits it, because Mike's got the comic strips, the comic books, the painting, the teaching.
Yeah. Well, I've done some research on that, because over the past couple of years, I have a commercial or professional dashboard on my Instagram, which shows you all the numbers. But I basically could tell by like what people would react to. The bulk of my fans or followers like my comic strip stuff. the bulk of people that are my fans like the Marvel DC stuff. There's a subset that likes the animated style, right?
Mhm.
And then a smaller subset of those people that like painting. But many of the people who like painting don't give a crap about the comics. And many of the people, I could go tonight and post my best painting on Instagram, and it's going to pull a completely different
Mhm.
set of likes and followers. So there are some general Mike Manley fans, but that is a small subset of. And so what I realize is like, if there are people who like uh, Mexican food, I'm not going to try to sell them Vietnamese food. I'm not going to try to sell them, escargot, right?
Right.
Because that's just not their thing, right? And like you, I've always loved doing cartoony stuff and realistic stuff. I like doing both. And I even remember when I was in art school, one of the things that they were sort of pushing is like, well, you just do one thing, you don't do too many different things, because then that gives people like in galleries a weird idea. And I'm like, why do I want to limit myself and limit things that I enjoy doing? That's like saying, well, I can play the guitar and the drums. So no, just one. Just play one instrument. Don't play the other instrument. And I really don't subscribe to that. So
So,
I think
go
I
ahead.
think no, you go ahead.
Well, I was wondering, do you ever feel like you? I'm trying to figure out a way to think about this, and I'm not trying to like, pigeonhole anybody, but now I'm thinking of you, Mike, sitting in a little boat, right? Maybe this isn't a good analogy, but you're sitting in a boat, and there are fans of yours who are fish that want to like jump into the boat, but I don't know. I don't know exactly where I'm going with
And
this.
I would just throw a bunch of M80s into the water. Get all
But
the fish.
But I guess it's kind of like today I'm fishing for trout, but there's a lot of different type of fish in this lake,
I think you just have to if you study your audience.
and you bring the net up, and you have different fish in the net. See, it's
Right.
coming.
Yeah. There's just, I realize that I'm not, if somebody who loves Darkhawk, 9 times out of 10 is not going to care anything about landscape painting.
Mm-hmm.
A few. And they might actually like my painting, but they're not going to ever, love painting in the way that I do.
Right.
And I'm fine with that. You know what I mean? Like you have different audiences. I think the thing to do is to not try to be angry or confuse it, is to understand it, and then you can navigate it. Then you can, okay, like if I'm on Instagram, if I was going to have a blog or I used to have a blog, if I was going to have an Instagram for my painting, that would be separate from my cartooning blog. It's a different audience, different set of people who have a different set of appreciation. It's like, some people like jazz and country western and swing and rap, and they just like any kind of good music. And there's other people who go like, nope, Chopin, everything else is crap, right? And so knowing that allows you to focus and not, I feel like, try to waste energy in an area or trying to appeal to an audience that is not going to be receptive to what you're trying to show.
Mm-hmm.
I think in general, what we're facing as an industry, the direct market, is that mostly the people that are the Marvel, DC, Image fans are mostly people from 35 to like 60, 70, 75. That market is shrinking, and that market is not being replenished in the way that it had traditionally been, which is every 3 or 4 years you'd had a new wave of 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds who would come in and start reading and collecting. The kids that would come up to you at a convention and want you to sign. You don't see that now. People who come up at the convention are got gray hair, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to realize that your audience is changing, your audience is aging, and how do you reach that audience?
Right.
How do you contact those people? How do you appeal to those people? Because you can't force an audience like a horse. You can't force it to like drink from that well. And a lot of people get angry and they get really mad and they feel, well, I'm just going to, why don't people, why would a 14-year-old like anything that I do? Why would a 14-year-old be interested in any of the strips that I produce or even any of the comic stuff that I produce? Because they're not seeing that. That's not normal for them to see something like that. 25 years ago, it was, but today it's not. So if you want to appeal to those people, you have to enter a different mindset and figure out a different way of producing something that you're interested in producing that might appeal to those people,
Mm-hmm.
And I see a lot of guys, a lot of gals, but mostly guys in my age bracket struggling to sort of figure that out. And so I think the direct market as a whole is struggling to deal with that. And the growth is like books like Leon. There's millions of kids all over the world that love comics. They just don't particularly want to read about Steve Rogers. And they might like Spider-Man, but they're not going to be reading about stuff from like 1965. It doesn't appeal,
And I think that kind of, I don't know, stings a lot of older readers. They can't understand why you would not love this the way that they loved it.
Well, it's like what you see when you're.
Was it not? Is it 9 years old? 9 to 11. There's
or maybe even a little bit younger. Like when you're 5 or 6, you start saying, I want to see this, and I want to see this over and over again, and I want to watch this show. I like these characters. I like this show, right? Well, it's very different. It's like I know a lot of friends. Like you're what? A little bit over 10 years younger than me. And so what you like is different than what I like. We cross over. But a little bit. Right. But like you like wrestling and things way more than I did because when you were a kid, all that wrestling stuff was like blowing up.
Yeah.
I was like already past that age.
Mm-hmm.
Where it would really sort of appeal to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I'm not a Ninja Turtles fan, but people who are a little bit younger than me are Ninja Turtles fan because I didn't watch the cartoons, right? I didn't read the comics.
Mm-hmm.
So that little window, that little 5, 6, 7 year window, can really make a big difference as a creator, as an audience. As a creator trying to reach an audience. And I always think about a guy like Kirby who had 4 or 5 different eras. So it was the 40s Kirby, the 50s Kirby, the 60s Kirby, the 70s Kirby, and then the old man 80s Kirby, right?
Mm-hmm.
All those decades, kids were different. And he was trying to do stuff that appealed to each, whatever those kids were reading in that decade. And most comic creators were not like that. They did like one thing. You did Barney Google and you just did, or you did Beetle Bailey and you just did that.
Shout out to Snuffy Smith.
Right.
The Cats and Jabber Kids.
Right. And they never deviated from that,
You know what? Eternity Forever. What up, Eternity? Happy New Year says, that they work with a lot of younger people, 20s and younger, and manga is God King to them, God tier, S tier, Mike Manley. American comics characters only exist in the movies.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know that from teaching. I just know that from 20 years of teaching and 10 years of teaching that high school class. And I would ask the students every year what are you reading? What are you into?
Mm-hmm.
What are you watching?
Yeah.
And I would just be really interested in like
Mm-hmm.
what they knew,
Right.
what they didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
and the kids now don't know Calvin and Hobbes. 10 years ago, they knew Calvin and Hobbes.
That's crazy that time has
Right.
kind of shifted.
Well, it's like 25 years ago he stopped doing it.
Yeah.
But that demographic of parents who used to buy those reprints of that stuff in like the Barnes and Noble or whatever, that's kind of
Yeah, that's over already.
right. Yeah. So,
Oh, you know one thing that is eternity? I don't know what it is. Kids love Sonic comic books.
well, because the game is still going.
I think I don't know. I think, yeah, I mean, Sonic is eternal, but every time I've come across some kids, somebody's drawn Sonic in the back of their books.
Yeah, right. But Sonic has been like a very well-known, popular character. Movies, the games, I mean, games are bigger than movies. So
Yeah.
games are bigger than everything else all put together. So,
But yeah. So I like how this has been flowing, you guys, and we're almost at an hour. I don't know when this happened. And there's Steve, was there any other parts of this you wanted to touch on?
I was about to open a whole other can of worms.
Oh, go for it.
So, Mike, you talk about Kirby's long career and the willingness of some creators. I remember this in comics that like the time the 90s was rolling around, the image revolution, a lot of Bronze Age cartoonists started to try to draw like Liefeld and McFarlane and Jim Lee. They tried to take on those kind of stylistic affectations. And I'm wondering, is that ever... Part of my head was always like, well, Jack Kirby would have drawn manga if that's what would have put food on the table and put his kids through school. You know what I mean? He would do he would if that's the work and that's the kind of work you get to, and that's what you do to pay the bills. He seems like the kind of person who would have done it. He probably would have bent the medium in his direction, kind of forced it to meet him halfway, but it still feels like there was a chameleon-esque qualities to some of those workman cartoonists. And I'm wondering if is that a good idea? Should people be following trends in those ways? Is that a thing that you ever feel tempted to do, that you can see that the winds are blowing in that direction and maybe you should do stuff like that?
Sorry, I didn't mean to hide Mike here, but
where'd he go?
Tom just took over the screen. Sorry about that. But Tom makes a good point.
Yeah, I think, I did a little bit of that because, at that time, there was a lot of pressure editorially because certain books were selling and making a lot of money. And at that time, editors also got a yearly bonus based upon the performance of their books. So there's even more pressure. But a lot of those Bronze Age guys also had to try to compete with Kirby. When Kirby was doing stuff, everybody had to kind of up their game, right? Make it more exciting, right?
Draw like Jack Kirby. Right. Draw the Marvel way. Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, John Buscema did that. He had a career before that. When he came back, he basically took the Kirby stylization and energy, and then he put his bravura drawing on top of it. He was the most successful at being able to do that. But yeah, there was a lot of pressure. I tried it, but the fact is that it didn't click. And what people also forget is that it was certain creators on certain characters would result in a certain return. You take that same creator and you put him on Squirrel Girl, it's not going to move the needle. It's always like X-Men, Batman, Punisher, that little circle of 4 or 5 or 6 characters, everything was like that, right? Which is why they put those characters in every book. Wolverine was every book, Punisher was in every book, Spider-Man was constantly guest starring, right? And that, again, because I was like living and working right in the middle of that all, that was a bubble. It blew up and popped within a period of 3 or 4 years. And once it popped, it has never recovered. It has never, which is one of the reasons why I got out of doing monthly comics, 1996, right? So by 1996, I went in animation. And I still occasionally did comics, but my full-time job was working in animation because I could see the decline. And one of the things that happened that was good is that it put artists in charge so that they could benefit from their creativity. One of the negative things is that it sort of, for a long time, kind of destroyed the craft as part of it. There was a lot of pressure against craft and for Flash. And we've kind of gone all the way through that now, and you see there's a lot more craftsmanship in comics, but the sales are not in the direct market. The sales are continuing to not recover. However, as we're talking outside of the direct market, sales are doing fantastic. More kids, the Scholastic and all these other, random, everybody's like just printing zillions. How many Captain Underpants books are, right?
Million.
If you had gone up to Marvel in 1991 and showed them Leon, they would go, no. Like they said no to the Turtles. They said no to manga, right? They said no to a lot. No, that's not we don't like that. We don't want to do that. So Kirby and those guys who came from the Depression, came from poverty, right? Have a work ethic that no one alive today has, because no one has come from those kinds of conditions. Very few people do, right? And so if he needed to draw love comics, he drew love comics. If he needed to draw sci-fi stuff, Kirby was trying to get out of comics like everybody was in the 50s and get into strips.
Sure.
But that didn't work out. Luckily, when he went back to DC briefly and then over to Marvel, we all know what happened. If he had been able to go into strips, there would have been no Marvel comics. There would have been no Fantastic Four. There would have been no Spider-Man. There would have been none of that stuff.
There's been some really great commentary in the chat, too, that I've been putting on the screen intermittently. It's always good to see stalwarts like Tim Fielder, Ray Anthony Height. I see Tom Zoller in the building, all these superstars. Thanks for your comments. And also, just to kind of segue into the next part, as I didn't talk about myself.
Yeah, please. I was about to ping you.
Well, this is another Leon year. So right now I have the next book on my table. I love all the product placement. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Do you have the stack of pages? Can you hold up the stack?
Oh, I don't have a stack. It's all digital this time. It's all it's all digital, bro. I mean, the work.
Can you hold up all the hard drives?
and then after I get the second book in the can, I'm going right to the next one. So it's like all Leon, all Dave TV, all day, all night.
You're like that Chuck Wagon ad where the little Chuck Wagon comes out.
I forgot. Oh, the dog would chase the Chuck Wagon.
Yeah.
Bobby Digital. That's hilarious. And I'm really excited about it. I have I'm booking appearances and school visits for this part of the year, and I'm excited because this wasn't a part of the Matrix of last year up until the end of it. And just seeing teachers and librarians and all those type of people be so excited about being able to have me come and talk to the kids is great. So I'm really excited. I'm living that life, y'all. It's great.
How does it? Okay, so we talked about. I think we had the big celebration here when we launched 10-4.
Yeah.
What has it been like after it's out in the wild? What has that? How have you seen reactions? Is it through social media? Are you getting forwarded? I'm imagining it's Santa-sized sacks of fan mail. I mean, what is?
No, you humor me, Steve Conley.
Dear Leon, please protect my school. No, protect my school.
No, a lot of it is social media. As everybody hates Twitter, most of my interactions with educators are on Twitter. I follow a lot of educators and a lot of librarians and principals and all that kind of stuff and kind of book groups. And they'll post like reports from the trenches. Here's our 4th grade class reading Leon, and there's just kids are drawing it. They're in it. Also, it's really been fantastic to see the UK version of this because there's I'm getting reports from like London and Wales and things, and I did a storybook talk maybe in November that showed in primary schools in London at like 6 a.m. or something like 6 a.m. here, or however that works. And it's all really cool. I get some emails once in a while with a kid saying something or the parent asking how they can get stuff. And I think the coolest part is like every day is different. You have no idea what's going to happen next, and I really like that part.
And it's like Leon and the Philosopher's Stone over there. What is it? How do they? Leon's got a monocle. It's Leonard the Extraordinaire.
That's right. Leon likes fish and chips.
I think they had a really interesting campaign there because a lot of UK influencers got the book and just went directly to the internet and were just like, this book is spot on, bop, bop, bop. And it's great. And it's like a different energy than the US, like they were it was like a concentrated effort, which I thought was really cool. But yeah, and I'm starting to see, like, I don't Google myself too much because you get hair on your palms, you'll go blind if you do that too often. But it's really wild to see like Leon show up in different languages and search engines, or there's like it's on Amazon.
Is there a Japanese version yet?
.jp and stuff. I'm not necessarily sure that they're reprinting it in different languages yet, but I know that it's on sale in different places around the world. I did see a UK printed version of Leon, which is like the same text, but the book is smaller. It's like
color to color.
Color, yeah, it's really cool.
And he has 2 monocles taped together for his glasses
with the 2 joints, yeah. So, but no, it's all very, very cool, and I'm just really appreciative of the attention. And I just saw something on Twitter this afternoon where some kid, there's like a little, they used to call them boomerangs. Remember that? They don't do that anymore. So it's like a 2-second video clip, and this kid is holding up the book. He goes, "I love this book. I love this book. I love this book." And I was like, that's really
like
cool.
It goes back and forth.
Yeah, it just kind of like goes, which is really great. So
that's amazing.
Yes, more Leon.
You really made it when you see goth girls dancing like Wednesday, holding up Leon.
We're gonna have to work on that. But so, and thanks you guys, and that's really my push forward is just all of this. And I kind of brought up earlier when we were talking about having different types of fan bases, like different parts of your career. I'm gathering a lot of different people who are following the work, and it's also interesting because I don't necessarily think it's me. They like the book. And they maybe have never met me or know who I am unless they looked at my picture in the back of the book. So it's kind of like a different type of separation that I'm not used to. It's like, this is the guy that draws that book. Oh, it's
right.
It's almost like a reverse connection.
I find it curious that we're doing the D&D stuff, the role playing game stuff. I don't sign the books. It's not That's not a thing.
That's not a thing in that world.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
interesting, the cultures, the various cultures of each little piece of this pie. How do you? So I know you have a Patreon, Jamar. The
Yes.
URL was on the screen a little while ago. Is it challenging? You, how do you handle that? Given that you're doing work for kind of such a younger audience, it's like I imagine bringing up even Patreon might seem it's definitely for your older fans, right? Or do you just bring it up to the
well, no, I mean, I think they're two different audiences, and maybe luckily I don't have a bunch of kids following me. I think kids get the book, and that's all they want.
Right.
From what I've seen, I've been closely following a lot of other middle grade authors who do a lot of social media content, and just trying to figure out how they connect and who are they actually connecting to. Less it be about YouTube for kids, which is kind of like a whole different substrata of YouTube. You're making like, hey kids, today we're that
Right.
thing. But I think a lot of the interaction seems to be with booksellers and educators and parents and librarians and things like that. And maybe there's another lane for kids. That's a lot of my research this year is trying to figure out where that column falls and how I fit into it.
But you're keeping you're for social media wise for 2023. You're going to focus still on Twitter and Instagram, or
I'm thinking about TikTok. I don't know, because I see a lot of people doing really great. I don't know if you've heard about Book Talk. That's a whole other kind of there's people who are like heavy on Book Talk, and I'm just like, yo. But I'm also curious about who's watching. Like they get the views, but like who is watching it? I don't think it's kids watching it. I think it's other, again, adults who are then kind of like creating the buying habits that then trickle down to the kids.
right.
I guess that's sort of the question altogether with social media is how effective is it? How effective do you use it? Like if you're going to spend every day making a little 30-second video, is that going to really pay off for you in the long run, or would you do better drawing 3 more pages? You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Right. Well, I think this is like the new, I guess, we call it diversifying your portfolio. Is kind of like, yes, you could be doing something else, but I think you still have to pay attention to it. Like I said this on the podcast years ago, I feel like this is the new era of being a cartoonist. Is you can't just sit somewhere and draw your books and get them published. You got to have a presence. People need to see your face. They want to see you. They want to hear what you sound like. They want to see you drawing stuff. There's a multimedia part of being a creative these days that I don't think was like if Kirby was around today, would he have a TikTok? You know what I'm saying? Like I think it's a different animal now. So
like him putting a cigar in and out of his mouth.
So I mean, I think not necessarily that I have to do something every day. I'm thinking about the social media component of all this, and like maybe I need to do content X amount of times a week and have a calendar for that.
And it's always changing. They're always changing the algorithm. I mean, like in the last year or two, Instagram, which was really growing, is like now they're trying to basically force you to make videos because that's what they want. So like, okay, out of my busy 90-hour work week, now I got to try to find another 3 hours to make videos to put on.
Well, see, here's the thing though. Like I'm still of a world where like if it don't fit, don't force it. Pause. But I think like if the stuff you're doing is not really conducive to having that kind of audience, so why even waste your energy? You know what I mean? But if you're of the mind like, yo, I see these eyeballs out here, I wish I had these eyeballs on my work, then you have to use that platform too, however it fits for you. Like I'm not going to see you, Mike, doing a cinnamon challenge or something. Like you don't have to do that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? But
well, I have abandoned my Twitter, so I'm not. It's still active, but I'm not. Using my Twitter. Yeah. And I don't see there being any fallout from it. So. know, it's like I don't think that most of the people who are serious fans of my work follow me on the other two platforms anyway. So I don't really see, and I'm not getting a bunch of like new randos coming along
Right.
every day on Twitter. So I cut it loose, you know.
I think there's still a space in here to say that if you have something that works and it's working, then keep doing that.
Right? Yeah.
You know, like people have been talking about Substack. I even know some cats who are watching and have Substacks. I said to myself, I'm not chasing that. Not saying that it's wrong or there's something wrong with it or it's broken or whatever. I'm just mentally exhausted and don't want to learn another new thing in that space.
Well, it was funny because everybody tried to jump to, was it Mastodon and
Hive,
and it was like, what? I see everybody on Facebook and Instagram. I mean, why do I got to jump on some other thing? And it was like so incredibly hard to figure out. And then it didn't work anyway. So everybody's like, oh shit! Like I just spent like a half a day trying to figure this thing out, and now I'm just frustrated.
Well, I'll say I kind of have the mind of feel like a lot of that stuff is a young man's game or young woman's game. I'm not, parsing them apart. It's like if I feel like I have to be where everybody else is going, then you're still in that space where you feel like that's important. And I don't feel like that's important to me right now. And the Patreon works as much as it works. I have a lot of things I want to do with that. Looking into even with the things that we do have, like, doing stories on your Facebook. If you don't do stories, is a way to add to the audience you already have and may even push it out further, or doing reels on Instagram. And again, I'm saying you don't have to, but if you want to, like Coffee Break is like nobody else has to do that, but I do it and it has its own audience. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a thing where you look at what it is and does it feel right for you? I mean, I think the worst thing you could do is force it, right? Because just what you're saying. If it's that I think of that Steve Buscemi meme with "How do you do, fellow kids?" That would be me if I jumped into some of these platforms. I'm like, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with going, no, that's not for me.
Yeah, like that whole Twitter thing. Like I just stay put. I have my blue check for back in the day. I just let things kind of ride out. And again, all that stuff. I don't like talking about politics on the show, but I feel like my interactions with Twitter so far have been very positive. And I think a lot of that has to do with what you're looking at, what you're searching for, what you're interacting with. When people say, "Oh, Twitter's a cesspool, Twitter's a dumpster fire," then what are you subscribing to, and what are you looking at that is giving you that kind of feedback? You know what I'm saying? I have very nice conversations with librarians. I don't know what you're doing on your Twitter, but I'm just saying, But I understand the ramifications of who's running it and all that kind of stuff. But I'm saying in my instance, I have nice kids say they love my book. I don't want to press the lead on that when I don't need to. So with the time left, I want to kind of jump into Mike's segment, which I think is very interesting. Thinking about the calendar year ahead and thinking about some of the people who watch our show or maybe have kids who they report things back to who are interested in art, or maybe thinking about going into a career as a cartoonist. Maybe there are people who are watching who are maybe not professional, maybe they're hobbyists, or maybe working amateurs, or people just getting their feet wet, maybe inclined to start thinking about art school. You know what? Maybe this is the year I'm going to go. And did we freeze? Everybody got quiet on us. I thought we froze. Maybe this is the year I'm going to, use my green stamps and I'm going to apply to art school. Or I just, maybe this is the year I start taking CE classes because I want to get better at something. Or I want to go to the Cubert school because they keep sending me the stuff in the mail. Mike Manley has some rules of the road to maybe help you access those things. Does that sound good, Mike?
Yeah.
All right. So you talk it up, and I'll bring this thing up when you're
Okay.
ready.
Well, usually this time of the year, like we were talking about, uh, your January is sort of like the start date for what will happen in the rest of the year. And one of the things I'm going to do this year myself is start doing a bunch of Kickstarters. So I'm going to be kickstarting at least 2 or 3 projects. Probably sometime later in the spring, I'm going to do the Soul Kids. I'm going to do a graphic novel of that. And then I'm probably going to bring back Girl Patrol and maybe even another older project. And I have like 2 or 3 other ideas that I want to work on. And one of the things I've been, I'm always paying attention to the business and the wins, and it just seems to me that it's better to produce something that people want, rather than get involved with a publisher and then maybe they go bankrupt. You've got to deal with all that messiness, and I've had enough experiences by now to know that everyone always has the best of intentions on Monday, and then come Friday, something goes wrong, and it's just sort of not worth it. I've had a couple experiences in the last 20 years. There was one I remember that they were going to launch this new company. It was going to be a 6-figure deal. Some movie star was going to go on the Tonight Show and announce this new company, and they're going to be doing all this stuff. And of course, the night that star appeared on the Tonight Show, he did not mention anything about the company. And I just had this feeling in my gut, and I did not sign the 6-figure deal. And I'm glad I didn't, because it would have blown up on the launch pad, and then I would have had to spend all this money to try to get the rights for my characters back.
Mm-hmm.
What some people are going through now with other companies who've gone belly up, and then they have the rights to your characters, and then you may find that those rights are transferred to somebody else. So it's like, I don't want to. So I've decided, even though my schedule is full with the 2 strips, I do have a real desire to start building more content for myself. And
Fantastic.
Working for myself. So I'm going to start. I might bring back my Patreon. I have a Patreon, but I have to sort of look at how much time I have. What would I put on a Patreon? And if it's like, oh, now I got to put in 2 pages of another comic, maybe that would not be the best thing now that those 2 pages would go better to working on one of the other projects. So again, I have 2 full-time jobs already as it is. So, but one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight was that usually this time of year, when I was teaching, students would come in, and I would teach a high school class. So I get high school students who are looking, anywhere from 10th, 11th, 12th, might be looking at going to art school, preparing a portfolio, especially people who are seniors, to apply to a school. And usually anywhere from like February to early April or May, a lot of people are submitting their portfolios to the schools to see if they're going to get accepted. And one of the things that I came to learn from teaching is that a lot of people, like all 3 of us, had dreamed to do what we do, but didn't really have a clear idea of the path to do it. And in order to do this, you have to take very clear, focused steps. And especially because art school costs so much money now, right? I mean, the average art school is going to cost you anywhere between $40,000 to $60,000 a year. And that would mean that by the time you graduated, you might owe $200,000, right? Just an obscene amount of money. And so one of the things that I would do is I would basically advise, I would talk to the student, we would talk about what they wanted to do, and then I would try to give them a path. But this little checklist I have here is sort of like sort of covers the basis for a lot of things, whether you want to do comics, whether you want to do animation, whether you want to do kids books, whether you want to do illustration. One of the things about art school that's very different, let's say, about medical school, even though you will spend as much time training to be a good artist as you will to be a doctor, and you, in some cases, will spend nearly as much money. You know, like some of those schools are, you know, like I said, 60 grand a year, you know? So to try to focus people on a path, I came to realize that a lot of times a kid would have an idea, a student would have a lot of, have the desire, but they didn't have a parent that knew anything about, like, well, what school should I go to? You know, I want to be an animator. Okay, well, what kind of animator do you want to be? Well, I want to draw, you know, I want to animate cartoons. Okay. Well, what kind of cartoons, you know? And so I came up with this little checklist, and I would basically, it became like a little mantra that I would repeat to people over and over and over again to try to help them focus on the path. And so the first step is you have to start doing research. Now, if you go to medical school, it is hard to get in medical school. They just don't accept everybody. You have to have good grades. You have to get recommendations. I know people whose children went to medical school. There's all these steps you have to go to go to medical school. And I sort of feel you really kind of need to do the same thing to go to art school, you know? And so what is it that you want to do? You know, do you want to be a cartoonist? Do you want to, you know, be an animator? Well, what kind of an animator? You have to make it more specific than just saying, hey, everybody, I just want to have my own show on Cartoon Network. Great. But there's very clear paths to do that. And so the first thing you have to do is you have to start doing your research. You have to start looking at the schools. What are the schools to go to? What are the best schools to go to? Really, there's only a handful of really great schools. Most art schools are not worth the money, right? And then the next thing you have to do, once you start researching the schools, whether it's cartooning or animation, you have to look at the faculty. Who's teaching? If you go to the website and you look at the name of the teachers that are teaching the classes there, make sure that they're still teaching, because a lot of schools will have people on their website that says they're teaching there that are actually not teaching there any longer. But they use the name to get you to sign, right? Look at the work of the faculty. Research the faculty. Are they well known within the industry? Are they working in the industry? Is their work great? Look at the alumni. Look at the students' work. Is the students' work good? Does it look like, oh man, I wish that I could do that, or that looks better than what I can do? Well, that's the place you want to go. All right. If you don't see good work, and the great thing now is that you can research the alumni. You can go on Instagram. You can go on Twitter. You can find these people. You can write them. You can ask them about their experience at that school, if they recommend that school. So you start then having a base of like, oh, this school is good. This school is not so good. Or what can I afford? Where can I afford to go? Right. So contact those people, pick their brains, start a rapport. You might even be able to get them to look at your portfolio, get you to make recommendations for you. All that is great now to be able to do that.
Mike, can I add one? Also, consider, if you can, because I didn't grow up like this. If you can do visits, especially check out what the facilities are at the school you want to go to. Because, like real rap, if you want to go to a school for animation and somebody says, "Oh yeah, we do that," you should kind of go and see what they're working with. Because a lot of places talk about how state of the art their technology is. You kind of need to go see it for yourself.
That happened here in Philly when I was looking to go back to school. There was one of those art institutes here in Philly, and they went out of business. They were getting sued.
Yeah.
They were doing all this stuff where they were promising people to do stuff, and they weren't really on the ball. And the reason I mention all this is that when you're 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, you don't really know what you don't know yet, right? You find out. So many people I went to school with who were younger than me found out things as they went through school, and they're like, "Oh, well, that's not the way I thought it would be.
That's not what they told me.
I thought I should have gone. I should have gone to the other place. I should have done this other thing, right?"
Yeah.
And administration, their job is to get you to sign to go to that school. Do you do clay animation? Yeah, sure, whatever. They'll tell you anything to get you to sign up, right? So that's what I'm saying. You got to research the school, research the teachers, research the faculty, research the students. Look at it. If they do not require a portfolio, do not go to the school. That means that they're just taking people's money. What is the acceptance rate? If they accept everybody, don't go to that school, because they're going to have a lot of people in that school that are just paying to keep the lights on, and then start now. The earlier you can start, if you're 10th grade, 11th grade, start taking classes now. Take some online classes now. Take life drawing classes. Take perspective. Learn perspective. If you can learn perspective before you go to art school, you will be so much further ahead. And one of the things that was very interesting that I learned is that there are schools in China that train students to get their skills up to apply to Art Center in Pasadena. So they're getting their skills up before they go to college. So when they're in college, they're not behind the 8 ball, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's probably heard the adage, the 10,000 hours. Anybody who's good has spent 10,000 hours to learn whatever practice they're good at. My 10,000 hours started when I was 13, right? When I was 23, I started working for Marvel. I didn't go to college, but one semester, and nobody taught me how to do cartooning, so I had to learn all that myself. Mm-hmm. Now, all these resources, fantastic resources. So if you start now, you start your 10,000 hours, Mm-hmm. And then the other thing, know the business you want to go into, know the people in the business. If you want to be an animator, know the name of animators. You want to be a cartoonist, know the cartoonists.
Wait, what?
I can tell you. I mean, it is so common.
Yeah.
So common for me to talk to a student who wants to be, in the business. And I would say, okay, well, who do you like? And they might say, well, I like Naruto, or I like this, but they couldn't name one artist. They could not name one animator. They could not name one director. They could not name, and so you can't really get on track if you don't know the business. You don't know the people in the business. And you also don't understand how the studios are set up. That business part of it will greatly affect your career, as many young artists now have found in the last 6 months when Netflix started laying people off. This is a generation that has never experienced that. It had just been since the 90s, grow, 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 grow. And now it's like it's shrinking. And there's a lot of people who had never experienced a business that was not constantly growing.
Mhm.
So I also sometimes recommend people not go to college right away. Take a year, gap year or two. But when you're taking that gap year or two, you're taking online classes, you're working, you're studying. So again, so that when you go to school, you've picked your school, you understand what that school does, you've applied to that school. Maybe you've even applied and gotten rejected, and then you applied again and get accepted. I've known that's happened to a few people. There's nothing wrong with taking a year or two of a gap year where you work and get your skill set up and get your portfolio up. A lot of people are very impatient and they go, well, you're 17, 18, you graduated, you got to jump right in. You got to go you got to go right to school. But I can tell you, as a teacher, there were many people that I taught who should not have been in school. And who repeated classes over or had to repeat years over. And I know a lot of people whose parents are not going to say, well, you kind of washed out this year, but I got another $45,000 for you to repeat those classes over again. I know a lot of kids were really in a bad way for things like that. So that's why I came up with this list of things to do. Do you need to go to school to be a cartoonist? Personally, I don't think so. There's so much material available online now. And you basically become a good cartoonist by practicing and studying and making comics. Making comics. You can go take all the classes you want. You can read all the books on it, but if you're not making a zillion pages, you're not practicing it, you're not going to get better at being a cartoonist. Almost every cartoonist I know who was successful did not go to class for cartooning. Especially of my generation, did not go to any school to learn how to be a cartoonist. So I don't think you need to. It's nothing wrong with going to school, but I don't think you need to go to school to be a cartoonist. Now, some people say, well, you need to go to school and get a degree, but I'm just talking from experience. I graduated in 2012 from the undergrad and 2014 from the grad program. There are many people I know that are friends of mine, people that I graduated with, people in my classes, people that I taught who graduated, who are now working in the business, doing something else, but still have to pay that loan back. And because it's so expensive, I really caution people to follow these steps and really inform yourself before you end up owing $100,000, $200,000, which is very easy to do. Because I think if you always look at these studies they have, art school has the worst return for the investment of almost any other profession. And that's because the way art school is set up, it's not set up like medical school, where if you are a bum, if you're a bad student, they kick you out. But art school, I've had so many meetings as a teacher where the student was failing and all the office is trying to do is figure out a way to keep the student in so they can come back next year because they want the money. And so this is my little checklist, I think this is a great profession, but you have to really, art school now is twice as expensive as when I started, which is like crazy. It's crazy. It's so expensive. And because it's so expensive, that's why I really sort of push this stuff. You can't be a hobbyist, like, well, I just like it for fun. That's great. But do you have $100,000 for your hobby?
And that's an interesting point, Mike, because I've also seen from my years teaching and being in the higher ed system of some students who come to art school to hide from a liberal arts college, or they get, this sounds really weird though, right? It's kind of like, oh, well, you know what, Judy's going to go here and just, flitter around and see what happens because she didn't want to go to a real school.
Right.
You
Or,
know?
or let's say you go to art school, but you don't really know what you want to do. You like the idea of being an artist. And so you spend the first couple of years not really being focused. Well, that might be $50,000 that you suddenly owe. And then by the time you figure out, oh, well, I really want to be a this or that, well, you might need another 4 years to get to that point. Right. So you're not gonna get that covered in your 4 years. I know so many students.
It's also dangerous, and I guess really we're always back to square one as youth is wasted on the young, right? It's kind of like you don't know, like you said, you don't know what you don't know. But you've seen so many kind of like hair on fire kids in their end of their junior year, like, I don't know what to do because we weren't thinking about any of this. But I also think that's just a part of being young. So I agree with Mike says that idea of a gap year or a couple of years. It's like when you're one paying for it yourself and not somebody helping you out, changes your perspective on being in school.
And
Also,
there's a
that's
lot
another
of
one.
really good places now that you can take online classes, like the Watts Atelier, Concept Design Academy, where you can take online classes with professionals who are working in the business who are very good. They're mostly West Coast schools because one of the big differences that I come to notice is that most of the schools on the West Coast, specifically in California, that have the students go there who graduate and work in the industry, the teachers are better and the schools are more rigorous. A lot of the schools on the East Coast are more fine art, and therefore there's a lot more lawyering, and you can kind of go through 4 years and you can get good grades, but then all of a sudden, you decide that, like, oh, I want to be a concept artist, right? Or a character designer. And then all of a sudden you realize, well, I don't know how to draw animals. I've never drawn animals. I don't really know my anatomy. I'm not very good at perspective. Oh, man, like all of a sudden it was like, well, wait a minute. All my teachers told me I got B's. Why, why is nobody returning my call when I show them my portfolio? And so I'm saying these things just to try to help people avoid that heartache.
And another thing that I have this really early memory that I was working at art school here in town. This is 2001. And I was working there was a period at the end of the year, almost like a senior show or senior thesis, or like, a point where all of the seniors are showing their work, kind of like a celebration type of, presentation thing. And we're all in this big auditorium, and it was the animation majors who were doing their little, 20-second, 30-second minute film
Right.
that they slaved over for months and months and months, and everybody's families there. And the lights go down, and the first person thing plays, and it's garbage. Like,
Really garbage animating, or
no, I wish it was like actual trash, but it was just like it wasn't good. And I'm if I could recall it, it was like a student who kind of never really showed up, put the least amount of work in, And, you know, on the animation floor, those kids lived up in there, you know, sleeping bags under the tables. But not everybody does that. And so this thing plays and it kind of goes off. It was like only like 50 seconds of animation. And then in the darkness, you hear somebody go, "Is that what we paid for? Is this what you came to school for? Is that it?" Everybody kind of just was like, "Oh," like a pall rushed over the room. But then there's also that part you gotta like, what are you putting into it? You know what I'm saying? And like your investors, who are this kid's parents, were not happy with the results that they got back.
Well, again, I like you. I've done those career days where the parent comes up and like they've got little Billy. Oh, my son is
Billy.
really a cartoon, animator, an artist, and most parents don't really know. Let's say you want to be a concept designer and you want to work for ILM. No parent, unless you're an artist who is a big fan of that stuff or whatever, knows all the steps that you need to take to get to that point, right? So they know my kid wants to be an artist. I know he's talented, but do they really know how talented this student is in comparison to other things? I mean, you've always put his stuff up on the refrigerator or her stuff up on the refrigerator, but that's not, nobody's at ILM's hanging your shit on the refrigerator.
What, in the staff kitchen? That's not happening.
That's right. Yeah. So,
Little Billy's story is a tragic one.
right. So I'm just saying this because I've experienced talking to parents, I've experienced talking to young students. Very nice, have a desire, have the dream, couldn't name one animator, couldn't, had no idea about any of the people who created or any of the specifics about it. And you can't really, and they will take your money and they will let you go through art school and they will let you do what I call Pikachu Fantasy Camp, which you're imagining you're going to have your own show and you're going to be a star on Cartoon Network, except you don't have any of the stuff that's going to get you a job at Cartoon Network. Starting off as a board person or a storyboard correction artist or something, so you can't even climb the ladder, right?
I think that might be a good topic for a future episode, Mike, is talking about the various jobs that are available to cartoonists, because I think a lot of this stuff isn't even on folks' radar. Like that all the different professions that you could, people think about, I'll draw Spider-Man, or I'll do my YA graphic novel, or I'll do a web comic, but those are very big buckets and there's all these other parts to them. And so I think maybe a future episode talking about that would be a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, just if there's greeting cards, there's people who make graphics for magazines and newspapers and what or websites. There's a lot of stuff for that. And I just don't. I feel sorry. Graduation day when you, and then a couple years later when you see that person doing something else. Maybe not a job they really want to do, but again, reality, time catches up with you and you've got to start paying those loans back. And it's one thing to be a hobbyist, which is great, right? Like most of fine art is supported by middle-aged white women. Almost every CE class in any college around here is mostly middle-aged women taking those classes. A few guys, but mostly middle-aged women, right? And that's great. They go, they enjoy it, but the reality is they're not earning their paycheck with their art. And if you're going to earn your paycheck with your art, that's a completely different game. That's a completely different game. And the better informed you are, and the earlier you are informed, the better your chances are of achieving your goal. And that's why I basically came up with that checklist through the years of experience talking to younger artists who would always say the same thing, I want to do this, but didn't really have a very clear idea of how to get to there, and then you realize yourself as a professional, like you just made those 2 books, all the steps that you went through to make those books, right? Not just even the drawing and the writing, but just all the other steps of how do you get that book made and shipped to you and then shipped to your client. So many people would not have any idea of how that part of the job worked.
And I think this is a really great resource. And I think this can be a kind of like, this is a very fluid conversation, meaning if you may go, okay, I'm 48 and I'm not going to art school, why would I listen to what Mike Manley is saying right now? But you can apply that to different parts of your own deal. Or again, like I said, maybe pass that on to somebody who is considering this. Or
well, this time of year, I'm sure I would get people, other teachers I know, would have students who write to see if you could be an apprentice.
Ugh.
Can I get a letter of recommendation?
Ugh.
Can I interview you for my
Ugh.
class? Right? I mean, how many years in a row do I get the people writing because they want to interview, like the worst, laziest assignment they give to people, like, write you, what is your job? How is your day go by? It's like, wow, really? You're graduating from college and you can't figure out what my day might be like?
Right.
And so I really want everybody to have at least the information available to help them make the best choice that they can make. I think because it's never an even playing field. Some people are more talented, some people are more focused, some people are richer, some people's parents are rich, and so it doesn't matter how much money it costs, they're going to send Cindy to the school no matter what, because that's what Cindy wants to do. But most people are not that fortunate.
Right. I think this was a really interesting episode. As I like to say all the time, where does the time go? Cal, God, take me away. But, we had a great time tonight. We're going to start wrapping it up. I think anytime we can be a resource for pushing information along, I think we all win. Even if you already know all this stuff, there's always a different way to turn the cube and find a different facet that you may not have thought about.
Absolutely.
And also, just talking about this whole episode of considering your calendar, like, how are you looking at the year ahead? Are you looking at it from week to week, or, quarter to quarter, season to season? What are you trying to get accomplished, in the next 2 months, the next 3 months, the next 9 months? One of the things I used to say to my students all the time, because nobody has time for anything, right? And I've started to realize in a cumulative way that I have not watched more TV than I thought I had, right? People are like, yo, did you watch this? No, I didn't watch that. What? Yo, did you watch? No. You didn't watch Andor? What? I'm working. And those type of things are no knock on what everybody does with the time, but that stuff starts to add up after a while. So I said, if you feel like you don't have enough time to get things done, do at least one professional thing a month. And that professional thing could be join an organization, do a meetup with cartoonists in your area, apply to a show, go to the art supply store and buy some stuff and use it. Whatever that is to kind of push you forward a little bit. And then at the end of the year, you've done 12 things, but you're still making a plan. So if every Friday you wake up covered in Grubhub, and you're just like, oh man, what happened?
I feel seen.
Right. Well, success requires commitment and sacrifice, and that's part of the thing that is often not talked about. Again, that's part of the romance that you see on social media of everybody having fun and they're working in this glamorous thing and it all appears like it's fun. But like you said, that's just the tip of the iceberg. And it's like I like video games, but I literally do not have time to play video games. Right? I can't take 10 hours out of my week to play video games. 1 hour a day, 90 minutes. I don't have time to take that and play video games, right? That's just something that, I look at them and go, oh, it'd be cool to have it. I don't have time to play video games. And if I said, okay, if I took 90 minutes a day or an hour a day to play video games, that 7 hours a week would be a minimum of a couple pages of artwork for me towards one of my other things. And the video game will return nothing to me. Build nothing. It might be fun. So again, it's like you have to be willing to prioritize. It's hard for some people to do that. It's hard for people to prioritize. And this thing is screaming at you all day. It's L bleep bloop blop bleep bleep. It's like I feel for younger people who are I'm addicted to this enough as it is. Updating my social media.
Sure. Mastodon all day long.
Right. I got people tweeting me, hitting me. I'm updating my stuff to wave my little flag every day. Hey, I'm still here. Right. But younger people are addicted to it in a way that I will never be addicted to it because my brain formed without it.
All right.
So
on that note, we're going to wrap it up. I got to walk my dog. We got to get into. I got to get back to the desk.
You have to go play video games.
Pew 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 pew. and I'll say it on the other thing that I'm never going to yuck anyone's yum. That's one of my favorite phrases for the last couple of years. Whatever brings you joy, do that. Whatever brings you entertainment, whatever calms you down, whatever you need to do to get you through this crazy dumpster fire of a world, great. But also know that if you are going to be a professional, anything, you have to make some sacrifices and make small steps towards your goal. And remember, you guys, a goal is a dream with deadlines. Word. Steve Connolly, any last words?
I liked everything that was said. I like everything. I would say that it's like if you can figure out the creative thing that releases almost as much endorphins as that video game, just as much dopamine as that video game.
Yeah.
Then that's the thing, find that. Because I'm telling you, tinker around with Nomad Sculpt, get rid of the other app on your iPad. Don't play that. Seriously, you will be amazed at the cool places that, the things that it'll unlock, the thinking it can unlock. It's really cool. Because I feel like at the end of this short life, will I have regretted creating? I think I would regret a lot of the video game time. I don't think it's gonna be like, oh, I shouldn't have spent those years doing that. I think I'd be much happier thinking that I left more artwork behind.
You wouldn't regret the time that you changed your character with a cheat code to a grandma running around.
No, I mean, clearing molten core was a big deal. I'm not going to say it wasn't, but
hey, I'm not gonna diss video games.
Yeah. I hear you. No.
But I hear
all things in moderation.
That's right.
All right,
you guys. I gotta walk this dog. We're still.
Cosmo's gonna walk you.
we're still living in a pandemic, so what we're gonna do to get out of here. We gotta wash those curvy hands. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you next week, maybe with a guest. Good night, guys.